You are listening to Perfect English with Danny. Improve your English every day. Never stop learning. Hello and welcome to Perfect English with Danny. In this episode, we will continue talking about the arts and literature. If you haven't had the chance to listen to the previous episode, it is episode 140, and we talked about the arts from literature to fine arts and performing arts. We talked about novels, biographies, sculpture, architecture, theater, concerts, and more. So if you would like to learn more about these, check out episode 140. In this episode, we will continue talking about our theme, and we will talk about types of art and artists, and we will talk in more details about literature. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hi Ben, where do you think we should start today?
I think we should start talking about the names of the people who are involved in art, or in other words, the artists. Because people usually confuse words that refer to the art form with words that refer to the artist.
I think you're right. Let's start with sculpture. We talked in the last episode about sculpture as an art form. But what about the people who practice that form of art? What do we call them?
The usual answer is to add ER to the verb and you get yourself a noun that refers to the person who does it. But ER is not always the right answer. Sometimes we add an OR instead.
That's right. For example, when we talk about painting, the verb is paint, and the artist who paints is called painter. Painter. But in our case with sculpture, we do not add an ER, we add an OR. Sculpture involves a person who sculpts something, and we call this artist sculptor. SCULPTOR. And a sculptor is an artist who creates statues.
And sculptor in English is escultor in Portuguese. It is escultor in Spanish. It is sculpteur in French. It's Bildhauer in German. It is scultore in Italian. And it is nahat in Arabic.
Great. Now, one other kind of fine art we didn't talk about yesterday is ceramics. Like making pots, bowls, and stuff like that. What do you think we call the person who does that?
Are we talking about pottery here?
Yes, we are.
So the word you're looking for here is potter. Potter. We call the person who makes pots a potter, like in Harry Potter.
That's right. And did you know that we can say to throw a pot, and that means to make a pot by shaping clay as it turns around on a special wheel, which we obviously call the potter's wheel?
Oh, I just know that potters make pots, but I didn't know that we call this part of the process to throw a pot. I tried it a couple of times, but the results were disastrous. I'm not skilled in handicrafts at all.
Neither am I. I didn't try to throw a pot or anything like that, but I tried different things, and I don't think my talents lie anywhere near handicrafts.
So our word here is potter. It is oleiro in Portuguese. It is alfarero in Spanish. It is potier in French. It is töpfer in German. It is vasallo in Italian. And it is khazaf in Arabic.
All right. We also talked last time about architecture, and we said that the person who does this kind of work designs buildings, and here is an example why you shouldn't always follow the additional ER rule, because we cannot say architecturer here. There is no word like that in English. The person or artist who designs buildings is called an architect.
Yes, the word is architect, and it is arquiteto in Portuguese. It is arquitecto in Spanish. It is architect in French. It is architect in German. It is architetto in Italian. And it is muhandis ma'mari in Arabic.
Now we know that the artist who paints is called a painter. But what about the kind of paintings a painter draws?
What about that?
What's your favorite type of painting? Do you like portraits, landscapes, still life, or abstract paintings?
Oh, I see. I think I like portraits the most because Capturing a moment in a person's life tells you a lot about that person, especially when the artist adds his or her touch to that.
Well, I personally like portrait photography more than portrait painting because it feels more spontaneous. In portrait painting, the artist may exaggerate a feature or ignore a feature, and the model is actually posing for the painting. So it is not that spontaneous. While in photography, a photographer can really capture a moment in time that is unique and expressive. But I do like portrait painting the most anyway. I like it when the subject of the painting is a human being.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about these different types. I'm not sure everybody knows the difference between them.
You're right. Well, a portrait is a painting of a person, and the focus is usually on the face of that person more than anything else. But it can be a painting of the whole body, and it's still called a portrait.
And portrait is retrato in Portuguese. It is retrato in Spanish. It is portrait in French. It is portrait in German. It is ritratto in Italian. And it is sura in Arabic.
We also have landscape, which is a painting of a scene in the countryside, usually featuring nature.
Yeah, and landscape is paisagem in Portuguese. It is paisaje in Spanish. It is paysage in French. It is Landschaft in German. It is paesaggio in Italian. And it is mandar tabi'i in Arabic.
And there is the still life, which is a painting of a set of objects that do not move, usually fruit or flowers.
Yeah, and still life is natureza morta in Portuguese, and it is naturaleza muerta in Spanish. It is Natur morte in French. It is Stillleben in German. It is Natura morta in Italian, and it is Tabi'atun samita in Arabic.
And when we talk about paintings, we may talk about an original painting, which is one that is produced by the painter, him or herself, rather than a copy or a reproduction of the painting.
Okay, so original is original in Portuguese. It is original in Spanish. It is original in French. It is ursprünglich in German. It is originale in Italian. And it is asli in Arabic. And reproduction in this context means reprodução in Portuguese, reproducción in Spanish, reproduction in French, Fortpflanzung in German, riproduzione in Italian, and Nuskha in Arabic.
All right, let's move on to talk about literature now. You were talking last time about J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling is definitely a writer, which is a word we can use for all kind of writers. But we have special words for writers of poetry and writers of novels. For example, J.K. Rowling is a novelist. It's pretty obvious that a novelist is a person who writes novels. And for poetry, we call the writer who writes poetry a poet. And the individual things he or she writes are called poems.
All right. Let's get these two words translated first. A novelist is romancista in Portuguese. It is novelista in Spanish. It is romancier in French. It is Romanschriftsteller in German. It is scrittore in Italian. And it is riwa'i in Arabic. And a poet is poeta in Portuguese. It is poeta in Spanish. It is poète in French. It is Dichter in German, it is Poeta in Italian, and it is Sha'ir in Arabic.
And as for Harry Potter novels, we call them a series of novels. A series of novels is several novels that deal with the same subject or tell stories about the same characters. In many cases, the story continues from one book to the next, so that you need to read the whole series, like The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, etc.
And novels or stories in general can be set in a special place at a special time in the past, present, or future, and we call this the setting of the story.
Yes, the setting of the story, which may be a movie, a novel, or even a short story, is when and where the story takes place.
And some novels or books sell very well, and they make it to the bestseller list.
Yes, for example, all Harry Potter books or novels have been bestsellers, and sometimes books become bestsellers despite all what the critics say about them.
Well, I have a question here. When we say critic, do we mean people who say bad things or give negative opinions all the time?
Not really. A critic is a person who judges whether something is good or bad. So part of his or her job is to say if something is good as well as if it is bad. Now, you might have heard that before. The critically acclaimed novel, film, or book, that means the critics said positive things about the work, or in simpler words, they liked it. But saying that, I have to mention that some works are ruined by some tough critics who may not do this on purpose, but they have their standards and they force every writer to live up to their standards. In many cases, the work of art dies right there at the table of the critic. But luckily, in the age of the internet, you can still get your work of art to people and let people be the judge of that. In a few cases, people kind of conquered the will of the critics and made some books that got poor reviews bestsellers.
But that is also a problem because advertisement and marketing plays a big role in bringing your work to the audience. And nowadays, if you want to launch a book, for example, you need a substantial budget for marketing and a lot of time dedicating for marketing to give this book a chance of success. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's much better today. In the past, the fate of your book was in the hands of a few complicated fellows, but now it is a business. You are supposed to sell your book online as if you're selling a watch or a lamp.
That's right. Times changed, my friend, and you have to roll with it. At least now your fate is more into your own hands than it is in the hands of people who do not care about you at all.
Well, you have a point. I'll give you that. So the word is critic, and it is crítico in Portuguese, it is crítico in Spanish, it is critique in French, it is critiker in German, it is critico in Italian, and it is naqid in Arabic.
Also, when we talk about books and critics, we say that a book got some good or bad reviews, and reviews usually talk about the plot and characters. The plot is the events that form the main story of a book, film, or play. Critics may say that the plot was strong or weak or predictable, which means the book was boring.
That makes sense. If there are no twists or surprises, a book or a movie is boring.
That's right. And critics can also talk about the characters. They usually say the characters were believable or not very realistic.
But since stories are mostly fictional, why is it important for the characters to be realistic?
Well, maybe you're talking about the word real. Well, the characters do not have to be real at all. They can be fictional, that are figments of the writer's imagination. That's fine, but the audience need to believe these characters. The characters need to be believable, even if you're talking about a wizard, like Harry Potter. We all know that the things Harry can do are not real. We accept that it is fiction. But after we accept the fact that the character can cast spells and do extraordinary things, we need to believe this character.
I don't get it. How can Harry Potter be realistic? He's a wizard.
Alright, what do you say if Harry was able to control time like Doctor Strange, and by doing that he returned to the time when his parents were murdered and he averted the tragedy, brought his parents back to life and used their help to fight Voldemort? And after he got his parents back, he figured out a way to control Thor's hammer, and he killed the snake Nagini with it. Then he suited up in Iron Man's suit and set out to kill Voldemort once and for all.
Okay, I got it. That will make it unbelievable and unrealistic.
There you go. Now, when books are done, after editing and proofreading is done, they are ready for publication, which means a copy of printed work offered for distribution.
Yes, the word here is publication. It is publicação in Portuguese. It is publicación in Spanish. It is publication in French. It is Veröffentlichung in German. It is pubblicazione in Italian, and it is manshur in Arabic.
Of course, nowadays, publications are available both in print and digital as ebooks, for example. A good thing about ebooks is that you can usually read a passage from the book, which might help you decide whether to buy the book.
Yes, that's very useful, but I liked it better when we used to go to bookshop, flip through the pages of novels and books of all kinds, and choose the ones we want to spend the rest of our weekend with.
Yeah, that sounds really romantic, and to be honest, it is. Unfortunately, many of these bookstores are closing because people are buying more ebooks than old-fashioned yellow-paged musty books.
What a shame. I know that most young people who are listening to us will be laughing by now, but they are missing a lot of love in the pages of real books.
Yeah, but come on, ebooks made it easy for all people around the world to get access to huge libraries that were off limits before. So it is a crucial advantage to spread knowledge all around the world.
Yeah, you're right.
So I guess that will be all for today. Thank you, Ben, for helping me out in this episode. Thank you all for listening to another episode from Perfect English with Danny. Don't forget, in the link you can find in the description of the episode, you can find the full transcript of this episode, the full translations of the keywords into 62 languages, and interactive and downloadable activities you can use to empower your vocabulary. We will meet you on Friday for a story to have some fun while we are learning English in context. This is Danny and Ben, your hosts, saying goodbye for now, and we'll see you again soon.